Good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to see you all. Welcome to today's session, Undeniable, How to Pitch Your Creative Ideas for Success in Hollywood. It is so good to see so many of you, and I hope you're all well. My name is Gemma, and I'm from the Expo North Digital team. Expo North Digital is Highlands and Islands Enterprises mechanism for specialist digital support for the creative and heritage economies across the Highlands and Islands region, and the project is delivered by Ironworks Venue. This workshop is part of HIE's Northern Innovation Hub, designed to build on and accelerate business innovation. It is funded through the Inverness and Highlands City Region deal, a joint initiative supported by £315 million of investment from the UK and Scottish Government, Highland Council, HIE and UHI. And without further ado, I am now going to pass over to our fantastic screen and broadcast specialist, Jessica Fox.
Gemma, thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. We have Jason Lust here. Jason Lust is an executive producer, joined us for a year. This is ending his year residency in Scotland. Jason, it has been an absolute joy to have you on our shores.
Thank you.
When he's not here, Jason lives in Los Angeles. He began by starting a company called Circle of Confusion that developed The Matrix. He went on to develop and executive produce films that you would have heard of, like Peter Rabbit series. What was the roller skating one, Jason?
Whip It.
Whip It. I never mentioned Whip It. I love Whip It. Yeah. That was such a good film.
That's a fun film.
It was a fun film. Jason just won an Oscar award-winning film, Pinocchio. For those folks who haven't seen that yet, that is just a stunning film amongst many, many others. Jason's been pitched to, he's pitched, he is the person to listen to about the art of pitching and how to make things undeniable for a Hollywood audience. Jason, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to dive in.
Cool. Thank you for having me. Thank you. It's been a good long I think it's almost 9 months, Jess, or something in that area from when we started the course. And I think today is a really good, the title, How to Make Something Undeniable in Animation, is a really good way to end that year. For whoever's here, it was pretty much part of the focus of the class, which we broke down into about 10 classes. So we'll see if we can give you a shortened, abbreviated version of what that is today. But I like to go off page, and Jessica and I do that occasionally, and so we'll try to go off page as much as possible. See if we could find something unique and different and oblique about this conversation as well. So
Jessica, that sounds awesome. And to that end, I just wanted to remind people that in the chat box, as we're talking, if questions come up, please feel free to type them in. I will try, there's a lot of information we're packing in today, so I will try to leave some time at the end for questions, but don't hold on to them until then. Please type them in the chat box and we'll address them. And Jason, before we dive into some examples, I think you have some stories for us. For folks who don't know what you mean by undeniable, can you talk about when you say a pitch should be undeniable, what that means?
Sure. I think it's, interesting to think about selling a movie in Hollywood almost metaphorically. Think about some of the more challenging things that winning a Super Bowl and kind of skiing, climbing Mount Everest, etc. Like there's so many people trying to sell their ideas to Hollywood, and there's just a general malaise of executives who just really, they're always on the lookout for that next great idea, but there's a cynicism about kind of towards everyone showing up, kind of like, is this really just another idea? Let's get on to the next meeting. And so you have to come really with something different. And I think, throughout the years of doing this, when I first started, I had no idea whatsoever how to differentiate. And then through, attrition and many passes and figuring it out, eventually I got to a place where I felt pretty confident about this particular process about setting movies up in Hollywood, about what, kind of like what, answering questions like what is a good movie versus what isn't a good movie, answering, questions about tone, about style, about why I should be making this movie versus why I shouldn't be making this movie. And I have a thing called a red flag list, and I ask myself a host of questions like those that before I sign on to any project. And if it doesn't pass, literally the red flag test is 3 strikes, you're out. And if it's 1 strike, I could live with it. If it's 2 strikes down, going down the list of questions, I possibly can live with it. If it's 3 strikes, I'm not doing that movie. And so once I get through that red flag process, I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I know what this movie is. There's either a high concept or a great story, or hopefully both. I think there's something that's really compelling. Recently, I've been finding, I'm doing a lot of musicals, and I've been finding whenever there's music integrated into the story, it's just compelling me that much more because I love music. And so, you never know all the different reasons why you're going to fall in love with a movie. There's many. That's why we tell these stories, and that's why we go through the pain of making them. But I think that then at a certain point, you have that movie, and whether it's a script or still an idea or somewhere in between, like a treatment, it's like you start to ask yourself the question of, well, how do I communicate this to others? How do I share it with others so that they can actually understand my excitement, so my vision, etc. And that's where, for me, when I was, it really started when I formed a company called Circle of Confusion, which Jessica mentioned was responsible for The Matrix, and it was kind of the story of the Wachowskis and what they had to go through on The Matrix after they made a great, very incredibly elegant independent movie called Bound. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. And after they made that movie, which was really well received, they had this next movie called The Matrix, right? And it got completely passed on by Hollywood. And then after it was passed on, they went and drew it out and storyboarded the movie. That has thus become the kind of graphic novel that you can buy. And when they sent that back out to those same executives who passed on the movie, certain executives saw the imagery and were blown away by it. And so it was the kind of dichotomy of the written page and the idea and the written page versus visual imagery, and that kind of poetry and what that means. And it, I think in a shorthanded way, these busy executives need to literally be force-fed in the kindest way to getting that idea across and bringing it to life. And that's what visualization enables, which we'll be talking about later. So visualization's a big part of undeniability, and building a deck. Once you have that idea, whether it's a treatment, a script, or just an idea, is going to help communicate that idea to those busy executives and to other people like directors and writers. There's a host of quote unquote selling your idea to a range of different people, from financiers to distributors to directors, writers, etc. I was on a call yesterday where I just hooked the agent of a very successful screenwriter who's written something like $3 or $4 billion of animated movies. And I have another kind of A-list musician attached to that project. And I'm forming the project. And we created a visual deck kind of identifying that idea. And once that screenwriter comes on board, we'll evolve that deck to the next level, all pushing towards what I would describe as making it undeniable to eventually the executives who will hopefully buy the movie and then hopefully go on to make the movie. And there's a great distinction there in that I've sold many many movies to Hollywood that just became that, a movie being sold to Hollywood, and it ends there. And that for a long time was or for a good fair amount of time was a rewarding process, because as I said, it's very challenging to sell these movies. But if they don't see the light of day, if they don't get made, I refer to it as the death of an idea, or the death of my babies. And so that it's a really painful process. So eventually I had to ask myself the question of, well, how can I do this and not experience that death, if you will? And so the visualization, the blueprint, the making things undeniable pushes things towards, I think, increases the probability of success in that what is called the development phase, which is when you sell a movie to the studios and it begins the development within the studio system, or the finance system, or the independent finance system. It's because when you share that idea, that script, that treatment, other people are going to have many of their own ideas, and they're going to want to evolve it, change it, etc. So before you, and we're going to tell some stories about this, but before you release it to the world at large, you want to make sure it's as buttoned up as possible, and ask yourself poke as many holes, and have friends poke holes at it, and really just build it out. And that's something that I take a lot of pride in doing.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was long-winded.
No, don't be sorry. That was so great, Jason. And I think you've given an outline of your process, so that when we show some examples and some stories, people really now have a rooted sense of why you're doing what you're doing. Before we go into those stories,
Yeah.
I'm trying to put myself in the position of someone hearing you for the first time. And can you describe what you mean by tone? That can be a little elusive to people putting together their first pitch package, or their first lookbook, or their first deck.
Yeah.
Can you talk about why tone's important and what it is?
I think if you looked at, I'm coming up with this on the fly, but if you looked at the whole movie process as like an umbrella, and broke up like style, plot, character, all the components of a movie script or a television script, I think tone would be the cover of the umbrella. And the reason why is it is the thing, I think, the thing that ultimately speaks to how you differentiate that idea in a particular way, and how that idea is kind of ingested and realized. And obviously all the other things, character, plot, they're all part of that. But for me, as I and this has been part of my kind of own evolution, I've found that while I like talking about all of those things, if I can't nail the tone, I kind of will never, I personally will never release it, because I don't feel like I will succeed in hitting that mark, whether it's selling it, making it, etc. So I have spent on my decks upwards of 6 months just getting to a tonal palette, or place, epicenter, if you will, on tone. Tone is if you're talking about comedy, tone, is what type of comedy is it? Is it a broad comedy, like kind of Some Like It Hot, or is it a more intimate comedy that fits into a genre like Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead? And so as you have, a movie idea, and you're searching for that tone, everyone that you're communicating that idea to is going to be responding to the tone. It's almost like this subconscious thing. It's a conscious subconscious thing, and it's just, yeah, again, for me, it's where I get most excited about building out a movie, but it's also probably the one that is the least recognizable. Like, it's easy to recognize things like character or stylization or plot, where people will not, like, just be focused on the tone. It's more of a subconscious thing and a conscious thing, but eventually it becomes very recognizable. And the I know I find the smarter executives spend a lot of time talking about tone,
Yeah.
and I do too. So there we go.
That's great, Jason. Can we jump into some examples?
Yes.
That would be great. Which would you like to
so-
go to first?
Sure. Why don't we start with a success first, and then we'll show some failures after that. So
That's
why
great.
don't we, and some people might have seen this is kind of old faithful, but, and I'm gonna quickly go through it and just try to articulate some of what we've just discussed. But let's start with, the Munchkins of Oz, Jessica.
That sounds perfect. Okay.
Cool, thank you.
I think I can screen share.
Great, thank you. So really quickly, because I don't want to spend too much time on each individual deck, this was a project that I conceived of during the pandemic. I built it out with a few different partners, but it was my kind of original idea. I always grew up loving The Wizard of Oz, the movie. I then at some point saw Wicked, the stage play, and then read the book and absolutely fell in love with that. And that's actually being made into a movie presently right now, which I can't wait to see. Universal's making it. And what I was blown away by with those two things, not to get into too much detail, but was the perspective of Wicked and how it was able to achieve kind of this high caliber of artistry, uh, even while a movie like The Wizard of Oz exists, right? It's this classic movie. How can you make it even better? And I would argue that Wicked, while it's not The Wizard of Oz, is still really a great thing. Now, because The Wizard of Oz is in the public domain for the most part, there's been so much derivative product on it. So before I knew I wanted to do something in that space, but I didn't want to do something that felt derivative, that didn't hit what I considered to be the highest bars, meaning the movie, the original movie, and Wicked, the book and stage play. And so as I started to look through the different worlds of what Baum had created, I came upon the notion of the Munchkins, and really kind of clicked into an idea when I was doing, kind of reading through the books and looking at a lot of the literature, the fact that the Tin Man was a Munchkin, which is something I did not know, and I was like, huh, that's really interesting, and that's kind of where the premise of this started. So we built out this deck with actually a Glasgow-based animation company. I work with them quite frequently. They're called Access, and so we started with the premise: what if everything you knew about Oz and the Munchkins was wrong? It's called the Munchkins of Oz. Now pay attention while we just flip through this quickly to some of the things that I was referencing: style, character, tone, right? Again, this was our first pass, and during the pandemic, when we completed it, this was something that took about 6 months to complete. We took it out, and we only took it to 3 places. And those 3 places were very A-list, high-level places. One was J.J. Abrams and Warner Brothers, and one was WIP, the production outfit for CAA, and the other was Reese Witherspoon's company. And we pretty much had a bidding war between the 3 from the outset, and we went with J.J. Abrams and Warner Brothers. That sale was based on all the work and input on this deck that and we could have, after that, after the level of interest that we had from the three, we probably should have continued on, but we chose not to. In particular, because Warner Brothers owns the rights to the ruby slippers, which you won't see in this deck. But after we sold it to them, we could use the ruby slippers because they were not in the public domain. So Jessica, just go to the so this is what a deck looks like. This is a pretty extensive deck. This is the cost of this deck, I would say, is upwards of about £100,000. A lot of artistry went into it, as you'll see. Just flip through it. You have things like synopsises of ideas. You have original artwork. This is all original artwork. Kind of starting on the journey that we take our main characters through, who are the Munchkins, as they arrive to the Emerald City. I won't pitch you the whole concept, but they have to go because the witches, or a particular witch, is attacking Munchkin Land. They have to go on a particular journey to save Munchkin Land, and that's what they're journeying to do. And we talk about things like inspiration. Here we talk about tone. If you could just move through it again, Jess. We talk about themes, which is incredibly important. Here we get to characters. And then we go through all the individual characters. Nick Chopper is our hero. These are all, for the most part, Munchkins. One of them is the witch that I was referring to, who is our villain. Then we go through the season arcs and season breakdowns, because this was a series. And we go through a little bit of who we are. That's the writer, that's the director, it's myself, my partner, Access, the animation company, and that's the deck. Now, thanks, Jessica. If we could, that's it. So what I'll say to that is, looking back on it, obviously I have tons of notes even looking back on it now, and I would love to go back and improve it. And exactly what the stills will be from the show. It was a first step at trying to communicate an idea very succinctly, and I think it achieves that, and that's kind of what we were talking about earlier. So that's
Jason, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I'm not to push things along, but I want folks to see some others, and I want there to be some time
let's do it.
for some questions. But can you show us? I always thought the Monkeys project is an interesting one because of the lessons you learned through it.
Yeah, no, so that's a great example. So this is a project, again, an original idea of mine. I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a twisted brain, so don't laugh when you see this one. But I think that I was doing this one with Simon Cowell, who had a deal at Sony at the time, and he was excited about the music. Again, looking for kind of a postmodern idea with this concept that you're about to see. I do a lot of hybrid movies. I did the Peter Rabbit movie. This is another hybrid movie. And we developed with a company called Animal Logic the visuals that you're about to see, and we took it into at the time the president of production of at Sony, who is a friend of mine, and she's no longer there. She now, oddly enough, runs J.J. Abrams' company, and she bought it in the room based on what you're about to see, and what eventually happened. There was so much love for this visual image and the concept, and everyone got so excited about it, and it rarely happens this way. It instantly got put on the release schedule. So what that means is that Sony bought an idea, and this never happens, and they basically said, we're going to slot it into our release schedule, and then the plan was from there to write the script, to develop the script, and to find a director and build it out. Now, what you'll the step between A and Z there, meaning making the movie and writing the script and finding the director, so many things can go wrong. And in this case, they did, right? So the lesson I learned here is when you do have an idea like that, you want to, I would never repeat it in this particular way, even though, again, as I said, it's exciting to sell a movie to Sony, it's exciting to get something slated. But if it just dies on the vine, that's not the result we're looking for. So this, what I learned here was it was too early for me to release this material, but I was doing it out of sheer excitement. It was hot, literally. You'll see in a second. It was like we pressed the album, and I got so excited because that's what the kind of concept we used to sell in the concept, that it was a concept behind a concept, as you'll see. And I just wanted to share it with a friend. She ran down the hall and sold it to her boss, Amy Pascal, who was the head of the studio. And that was it. And it was too late to pull it back. So anyway, can we show it, Jessica? So you guys are familiar with the band, the Monkees. It was kind of a play off of the band. And what we did was we made our own LP, obviously borrowing from Abbey Road and the Beatles. And if we could show the next page, Jess.
Sure. It's sorry, I'm gonna have to stop and start because they're different images.
Okay, yeah. I'll just show that last page and we could leave it at that. The next
do you want the characters or the last?
Yeah, the characters.
Characters, okay.
Yeah. And we just, we literally built it into a vinyl record and went in with that. And everyone was like, oh my God, there's a movie here. This is so exciting. We want, and from there, I've just told you the rest of the story. So look, I think a lot of that undeniability, this goes to that point as well. I would say this was an undeniable start to a movie, but we didn't give it enough supporting vision, meaning we didn't really spend enough time on the actual treatment, characters, and storyline, and therefore when it became time to build the movie, it was building the movie by committee, and that's never something you want to do. So that's the story with the Monkees.
That's awesome, Jason. Thank you so much. That's so valuable because on one hand, and I think we'll go into maybe a story about this or just generally about this. Sometimes you can give too much information away in a pitch.
Yeah.
Sometimes holding some things back is really important, but it's a Goldilocks principle. If you don't give enough information, then it gets stuck in development land and swirls around because it's too amorphous. It doesn't have enough structure. So what about the other end? Can you ever overpitch something, offer so much information that in so much detail that people start splitting hairs?
Yeah, no, there's a formula and a rhythm to this, and I would argue, as you'll see from these 4 or 5 projects that we're showing you, each one has its different tone and rhythm and style and DNA, and you have to each project has to find its own rhythm. And I think that the notion of too much is definitely something you have to be sensitive to, and the notion of too little is something that you have to. So it's about finding that undeniable essence, if you will, of what's right for the organic project that you're working on.
That's so helpful, Jason. Thank you. And if folks in the audience, I know that they're all different stages of their film career, but when they are trying to approach someone to pitch, is there an appropriate way of asking, can I pitch to you?
No. No. I mean, do everything and anything. Obviously, don't offend anyone, and just try to be as friendly and gregarious as possible. I think that's the name of the game, is how to get into the right room with the right project at the right time with the right undeniable project, right? And I think that, you know, you've heard me talk about the Sisyphean nature of the journey, right? It's you just can't you
Yeah.
can't accept no for an answer, and so you just need to keep on pushing that ball up the hill. But I think that um, you know, it's not become easier in
Yes.
the 20 years I've been doing this. I'm not trying to scare anyone here, but it's probably right now the hardest it's ever been, because of all the factors we know, because of the strike, because of the streaming war bust, because of several other things, economics, AI. You know, and you know, AI, you know, there that will change probably. There will be a respite from how challenging it is right now because of new tech and things like that. I don't mean to be a doomsayer, but you need to not approach this with closed eyes. You have to have open eyes, and it is a business at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
people want to make money.
Yeah.
And if you can figure out how to do both, tell a creative story and make money, then you will not have a hard time pitching the second time around.
That's awesome, Jason. Thank you. You know, you mentioned, and if you're okay talking about this, you mentioned the price tag on some of the pitches, or one of the pitch that we saw. And also you mentioned a timeline of like 6 months working on getting the right tone.
Yeah.
How is AI, do you think, going to affect the time scale of pitches? Have, you know, in terms of your use of it, have you found it freeing, limiting? What's your feelings on it so far?
Oh my God, I can spend 3 hours talking about this. I mean, it's such a sensitive, heat-seeking missile right now question, but and I think it'll just detract from our major point. But just really quickly, I think it's undeniable that it's happening, and you can't fight that, and it's going to change everything as we know it, and
Yeah.
on every level, on how I do a deck, on how movies are made, on actors being
Yeah.
present in movies, just so many different points of view, and I'm sure we've all read, you know, a bunch of articles. I think the jury's still out on. I'm a cynic, and there's lots of people I talked with who are massive optimists about you know it. You look at you know, a filmmaker like Chris Nolan or Steven Spielberg, who are detractors of AI, or vocally have come out and spoken against it. You know, I think it is going to take something away from the craft of filmmaking, and that for me is
Yeah.
the scary part. But can it be an effective tool to make something undeniable, to create a deck, to do it inexpensively? Absolutely. I did my first deck in 6 hours, and that deck could not compare to the ones that I've just shown you, or the first one I showed you, which took 6 months and cost £100,000, compared to the AI deck, which took 6 hours and cost nothing. But that deck was what I used, what I just spoke to you about earlier. I just mentioned, I was on a call yesterday that secured a major musician and is probably about to secure a major writer.
Wow, that's
It
amazing.
can still be a function. So yeah, there you go. I
Thanks,
don't know if
Jason.
that,
That's amazing.
yeah,
I felt like we needed to touch on it, but to kind of go to
sure.
the opposite end of the extreme,
Yes.
would you be able to share the immortal, another type of pitch that's very, very personal and hand-drawn rather than the AI?
Yeah, I think it's a really good example of all the things that I would say AI, you know, of why I don't like AI. So yeah, if we could pull that up, and again, this is still a work in progress. We're finalizing the script right now. We were at the Annecy Animation Festival last year with it. We're going back this year with it. Now with the script, we had an unbelievable response to it. We're Yeah, it's again, a work in progress, but something I hope to make, and something I'm incredibly excited about. We're calling it a kind of a story for our times. It's a anti-Ukrainian war story of a girl as she's kind of put into a situation where she has to save her family from this character called the Immortal, who is was a religious zealot, and now has become a kind of dark magician, and the story goes from there. So if we could just flip through the art again, hopefully you'll get a sense of the tone and style. This will be a what essentially is a 2D movie. It'll be my first 2D movie, and those have, the second you say 2D, they have a different tone and style than, for instance, a 3D movie. So you'll see that, and hopefully in the deck.
This is so
That's the
beautiful. Every time I see it, it just like makes my heart sing. I really want to see this movie.
that's the Immortal character there. And we're actually going after Hollywood talent that is Ukrainian to voice the characters. Not all, but some key ones. And yeah, I agree with you, Jessica. I'm kind of feeling like this is maybe the movie I was meant to make.
Absolutely, I'd agree with that.
I was just in LA a few days ago with the director. And we're just, yeah, we're so excited because we're getting the script in a few days.
Oh, that's so exciting. So I think it would be interesting for folks to know this was done before the script. These images.
Yes, absolutely. So this was done. We took this to Annecy. We showed people a kind of a visual palette. We had a treatment to support it. So again, not like the monkeys where you just have a visual thing, but I think it was like a 10-page treatment that really took you through Act 1, 2, and 3 of the story, which is what you're seeing right now. And it goes through the chronology of the story, the visual images. And yeah, and then we went back, we saw that there was a really positive response for it. So now we're putting those pieces together, writing the script, attaching talent, going back to Annecy, and hopefully locking down financing.
There's something so visceral and emotional about these images. It's very exciting. They're stunning.
Yeah, the filmmaker's a Russian filmmaker from close to the Ukraine, very sympathetic to the Ukrainian cause. I just there's many reasons, I won't get into all of them, why again, going back to that red list of it's this one's interesting because it probably did have more red flags than 3 strikes, and yet I still wanted to do this, and so we're doing this one.
Jason, are these so that people can have their own system of red flags? Are these red flags questions that you ask yourself, like it's the same question? Or are they just instinctual? Like, oh, if there's something over here, there's something over there, and I'm almost at my 3.
They're all the lessons I've learned in doing this for 20 years. So each time it's like, oh, okay, when you have one of those mental notes from experience, it's like it becomes part of the list, right? Like, I'll give you a really silly example, but if you're making a hybrid film like Peter Rabbit, Paddington, Scooby-Doo, Garfield, etc., right? That they are all based on characters that are either licensed or from the public domain. So when I made Peter Rabbit and sold it to Sony, I knew that there was a character that could be marketed in a particular way. Hybrid movies are animated movie, the characters are animated, but they're set in live action worlds.
Yeah.
So for that genre, you can find 1 or 2 that, like, interestingly enough, John Krasinski just made a movie called If that Paramount's releasing, and that is kind of a hybrid movie, and it's not based on one character, but you would, if you're looking at the genre in total, 85 to 95% of the hybrid movies are going to be characters like Peter Rabbit, iconic characters. So that's just a rule, right? So if I start to develop one that doesn't fit that mark, I'm already setting myself a challenge, right?
Okay.
So go find one that fits one of those characters to tell that story. In fact, I just wrote a script based on one that I'm hoping to make this year.
Jason, you're a busy guy and you do such good work. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Was really exciting. So we have some questions coming in.
Yeah.
Now that we have about 15 minutes left, I just want to leave room for questions. So people, please feel free to like raise your virtual hand up. We also have questions in the chat box. So Scott wants to know, how much do you think about your audience when you're putting together the deck and also doing the final pitch? Do you tailor it to your audience, I guess, is the...
I guess the ultimate audience for me is myself, first and foremost, right? And that's where I think it starts and stops. And everything between those bookends is the general audience, right? And who, if I'm, again, going through that red flag process, if I take an original idea, let's call it Peter Rabbit. So here's a really good example. I started that concept with the writer, and we designed the character of McGregor and we used the kind of model that we borrowed from the movie model was Amadeus, which is told
That's so cool.
Salieri being the narrator. And so we wanted McGregor, the person who basically, killed Peter Rabbit's dad, turned him into Rabbit's pie. We wanted him to tell the story. And that's the way we pitched the movie. And we pitched McGregor as Sacha Baron Cohen. And we started the movie in an insane asylum with Sacha Baron Cohen
That's awesome.
being interviewed by 3 therapists, and he's in a straitjacket in a white room with computers. That scene never made it into the movie. Never, everything changed. Okay, but the point being is, I was making that for myself, and Robert, the writer, for him. We loved it, but eventually the director and the studio weeded that out for a variety of reasons I won't get into. So look, as Hemingway says, you have to throw your babies out with the bathwater. That was one of the babies. I think had that stayed in there, it would have been a better movie. And I could give you many different other examples, but I think that, as I'm thinking about the audience, I'm trying to reflect on different segments of the audience, but ultimately you got to use yourself as that barometer.
Yeah, that's great, Jason. And if you're like a lone writer doing a pitch and maybe wanting to get some visuals so literally everyone can be on the same page and you can gather a team, is it okay? Yeah. You have so many people working on these pitches. You have the director's statement, you have visual artists. Is it okay to just do a pitch deck and just have you as the writer and then no other team members? Or would you wait to pad it out with more folks?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a really great question. And here's why. I mentioned about that writer that I pitched the writer's agent yesterday, and he's someone that I've worked with before 3 times, in fact. So I have a relationship with him and his agent. His agent is my agent, and I think that I mentioned that there was a musician on the project as well. The idea that I initially took that AI-driven deck to my agent with was pretty much by myself, right? I had a conceptual partner and a deck partners that I did the deck with, but I took it by myself, right, as producer and as idea generator. And I could have taken it had such a good reception just based on the idea. Like, I could have done the same thing I did with Monkeys, and my agent was so excited about it, wanted to take it out to the market. But we then said, you know what? Let's add a great writer. Let's add a great musician. Let's make this undeniable. Let's build it out. So yes is the answer to your question. You can do that. There are no rules, but I would I think it's worth spending the time to involve other creative people that make your vision stronger, because it is a village that you need to make these things.
That's a great answer, Jason. Thank you. Okay, so questions are coming in thick and fast.
Yeah.
Deirdre wants to know, how do you find a creative director?
A creative director, meaning a director?
Yeah.
No.
No, like the gatekeepers.
Oh, well, that's what I consider myself to be, that gatekeeper. So I think we're using two different nomenclatures for the word producer, and it reminds me of Billy Wilder's joke, which I'm gonna tell, the great, Some Like It Hot, the great German director, when asked by the press, Billy, what does an associate producer actually do? And in his thick German accent, he says, "You don't know? Of course, he associates with the producer." Meaning, there's the long list of producer credits: executive producer, producer. No one ever knows really what any of these people do. But what I like, when asked the question, "What do you do?" I like to say I initiate the idea, I build them out, I find financing, I'm on set making the movie, taking it through distribution and all those things. And that's what the producer does. And I think you're calling it a creative director.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Jason. And Iona wants to know, how do you protect your idea when pitching and getting advice from others?
That's great. You register your treatment. You have to write a treatment, because ideas are not protectable, are not copyrightable. So you have to build out that into a discernible treatment. An expression is the word that the Copyright Office uses, and that expression of that idea has to be put in paper and submitted to the Writers Guild, the Copyright Office, ideally. Now, when you form that expression on your computer or in your notepad or whatever, it is actually copywritten at that moment in time. But it's always best, just for further proof, to send it to, as I said, the Writers Guild office. I think there's a small fee of like $15 to register it. Always worth doing.
That's great too. Really, really good, Jason. Thank you. Britt has to dash off to pick up the kids from school, but says, thank you very much. You have been very inspiring. So Iona also wants to know, should you try and get an agent when you are early in your career? You mentioned sending materials to an agent. What do you think about that?
I mean, of course, because it's always great to have someone as your spokesperson that's not yourself.
Yeah.
You have to be your own agent, but if you can find an agent that is focused on your vision and kind of agrees with where you want to begin and take your overall experience to, then yes, is the short answer. Of course. I think everyone now, whether it's a manager or an agent or both, or an agent, manager and lawyer, some people only have lawyers, some people have all of the above. I have a lawyer, I have a agent, I don't have a manager. I work with, a lot of management companies. I owned a management company before. But ideally you want, the old adage, the reason why lawyers go into business together, rather than just, Robert Johnson, attorney at law, it's Johnson and Johnson, attorneys at law, is because there's a psychological thing that when there's two, there's more, the human reaction is it's more trusting, it more embraces ideas, it's more confidence building. So just for that factor alone, I think it's important. But you also have to be really careful that it's the right agent or manager or lawyer.
That's great, Jason. And I just to give folks a sense, because when we say, you want to make your pitch concise, people are seeing a lot, you want to differentiate yourself. I just want to give people a sense of really how much is on your plate. So if someone was pitching to you, how many projects right now are you currently working on?
As you know, I'm trying to shed some of them, but I have a hard time. I probably have 60 movies on my slate right now that I'm developing.
Yeah. So it is a lot. There are really good reasons why when you go to a producer or a studio, why you want to make sure that your pitch is concise and stands out. They have a lot of things that they're juggling.
And there's a reason for that, Jessica, that you take on that many, and as I get older, I'm trying to make it less. is that it's just a numbers game. I mean, again, you want your babies to live and become movies or shows or expressions of the ideas or universes, in the best case, right, where they become a franchise, right, where there's books and plays and all that, right, like The Matrix, for instance, or Peter Rabbit. And yet there's a thing called a conversion factor, meaning every studio converts a certain amount of its development. Some are 10%, some are 20%. It doesn't get much higher than 30%. And so for every 10 movies that they take on, they only make 3, right?
Wow.
And
Okay.
so you have to, if I have 60 projects, at my best, I'm making what, 18. But as I said, I'm trying to lower that number because 60 is too much, and everyone gets a little bit schizophrenic when
Yeah.
there's too much.
Yeah, absolutely. There's too much division in your attention. I can appreciate that. Now, while we're wrapping up, I just wanted to make sure that all the questions you want to ask Jason while we have him here today. It looks like, oh, there's more. Laura wants to know, I've written a short film and created a basic lookbook. That's great.
Mhm.
Well done, Laura, with words and images. Any advice about what I should do next?
So, sorry, say that one more time. I've created a
A
film,
basic lookbook with
right?
words and images for a short film.
Short film. Okay.
She's written a short film and created a basic lookbook
Okay,
and
great.
images. Any advice about what to do next?
Well, yeah, I mean, go make it. And like in order to do that, I don't know what the budget. Does she have a budget? No
Laura,
budget.
if you feel comfortable speaking aloud, you can.
Hello, first of all, just to say thank you so much. This has been so helpful. I've been frantically taking notes, so thank you. It's been brilliant. Yeah, I've written the short film. It's pretty much ready to go, I think, but I've been writing to everyone trying to get funding. It's just I've been hitting lots of brick walls. Nobody seems to have any money these days. I'm a first-time writer. I'm an actress. So it was really just to get some advice about what you think I should do next, where I go from here. I have done the lookbook, but it's much more basic than what you've shown as examples of for your features. So yeah, I'm just really looking for some advice.
Well, first of all, don't let that, kind of those, as I said, that lookbook was very expensive. So don't let that, sway you in any way, shape, or form. I just wanted to show examples. Again, put everything that you can into your own and try to just make it as undeniable and the best you can do it. And that's all you can do. I think when it comes to funding and finding financing, it's all the usual suspects. It's friends and family, it's doctors and lawyers, it's people want to be in the film business.
Dentists.
So but what you have at your fingertips here through Creative Scotland and some of the other funding options in the UK is a supportive, theoretically a supportive government. So the one thing I would say is if you can find a producer to work with you to help bring life to it, that at least then you're in a team building phase and there's someone else and you're propping up each other. So maybe consider finding a producer who's already produced a few shorts and is looking to produce more.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Laura, can I just quickly ask, because I know we have some producers in the audience. What is your film about?
It's about a clootie tree, which I don't know if many of you will know what that is. There's one in Inverness actually, which is the one that I saw that inspired the film. But it's also about alcoholism and the responsibilities that a child is left with when a parent passes away, and all the shit that they have to deal with, basically. So it's a story of hope and redemption. It's about Hogmanay and using the Hogmanay as an opportunity to cleanse, literally and metaphorically, and have a fresh start after a really tough time.
Oh, that's beautiful. That sounds great. That sounds amazing, actually.
Thanks, Laura. That sounds beautiful. That sounds amazing. And Nicholas has his hand up very patiently. We have time for a couple more. Nicholas, do you want to speak? No. Okay, we will move on. If Nicholas comes back to us, he is welcome to ask the question.
Nicholas said he shared a file. Could we get your Instagram? What? I don't have an Instagram.
It doesn't have an Instagram. Barry wants to know, have you witnessed an individual successfully pitching an idea as a one-person team? Essentially, an individual being able to sell an idea or a concept, but maybe not being able to produce the visuals, like Barry, do you mean like a verbal pitch?
Yeah, I mean, this might sound a bit strange. Obviously, I'm actually a graphic designer by trade, but I'm actually someone gone the opposite direction with it. I'm just kind of wondering, have you ever seen someone come up with, so literally they've got a fantastic concept, as I say, like the ideas there, they've got all the story, they've got all of the, what in their head might be the visuals, but obviously if they can't produce something that's kind of got this wow factor to it and in a visual sense, is that something that you've actually kind of seen? Is this, is someone come up with an idea that's so fantastic that people are just, almost able to imagine it in their own heads, but obviously they can't produce a deck that is visually sort of stunning? I guess that's kind of the easiest way to say it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that was the traditional way before, kind of, going back 20 years before the Matrix and the comic book movies, Marvel movies, etc. I think there was a lot more of just going in and pitching the ideas and pitching them out. And I think the one caveat there is again, it depends. It always depends who you're selling it to. Are you selling it to Hollywood? Are you selling it to the UK? A UK distributor? Or are you selling it to an Indian animation company? Everyone's different. If you're selling it to Hollywood and expecting to get paid $250,000 plus just to write the movie, which is what they pay for these things, that's pretty much a general, kind of mid-range to lower range deal. They want to know that they're buying it from someone who can deliver that idea. And so that pitch, like I have a very dear friend who just sold a very successful pitch in that way, without visuals, right? And he's been on what's called the blacklist in Hollywood several times. He went into the head of the studio to pitch the idea, and what he said to me is the head of the studio said to him, "It's the best pitch they ever heard." And I was like, that's fantastic, great. And he said to me, I said, "How did you do that?" And he said, "It's taken me a long while to get to that place where I understand what the executives want and what they don't want and how to speak their language." And so that's why, for me, the visuals are almost essential, because I think there's few and far between people who can come in and deliver a pitch and sell it in that manner that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, obviously, like, because AI now can obviously just open up these doors, being able to sort of people can now produce content without having to have that sort of that creative background to it. And seeing Adobe now, I've obviously now started to bring AI into Premiere now, where you can literally just draw, you can map out something on the screen, and you can literally now just put AI into a segment of a video. And it tracks it as well, which is just kind of like, wow. But it's yeah, no, it's fascinating. It's just to kind of sort of see now, obviously, because obviously with AI leading the way, obviously now for almost anyone to be able to produce visuals, it's almost like it's the Seinfeld idea. It's going to in front of a team with an idea that, obviously in the show it was an idea about nothing, but obviously that's the same idea of just talking about something, and that's what you're selling it on. It is literally, it's a concept.
I mean, the fact that you are a graphic designer and have the knowledge base that you do of the different software, programs that drive these things, I think puts you so much more ahead of everyone else. And so, I don't know what your skill set is with respect to being a writer and expressing the ideas themselves. So for you to either partner with a writer or for you to work on that aspect, and you it sounds like you could potentially have the full package, and so it then becomes about how good are the ideas and how you're presenting them. But to your point, like, I think we're at this amazing period of time where the barriers to entry just keep on getting lower and lower, depending on how one can utilize those devices, those forms.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, that's great. Thanks for that.
Sure.
Jason, thank you so much. I really am very sad to say this because this is your last event at the moment with Expo North, but we have come to
Yes.
a conclusion. Thank you so much. This was a fantastic event. I feel like I can see everyone madly scribbling notes, and I know folks found it really, really useful and helpful, as did I. I just want to let people know, if you want to continue chatting with us or getting support, I've included the Expo North Sector Support Services link in the chat box that you can see. Jason, thank you, and I will pass it on to Gemma to conclude.
I'm just going to take my hat off. Thank you, Jessica, and everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Jason and Jessica. It has been an absolute pleasure working alongside you, Jason. And yes, sad that today is your last one, but hopefully not for too much longer. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed that session, and I too could see so many scribbling lots of notes down, which was fantastic. Today has been recorded. It will be available very soon on our website, which Jessica has put the link on the chat box, but you will find it on www.exponorth.co.uk, where you can also look at our event section, sign up to our newsletter to be kept up to date with future events and news. And also on that website, we have our video archive, which is where you'll find today, but you'll also find lots of extremely interesting content, as well as our inquiry form if any of you are looking for some specialist sector support. So please do get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from any of you. Make sure to connect with us on Facebook, X, also known as Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And once again, thank you, Jason, thank you, Jessica, and thank you everybody else for joining us. Hopefully we will see you soon. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.